pretty good about
We'll be right across the water if you need us.
I'd like to call the September 20th, 2022 Waukegan Public School Operational Service Committee meeting to order. If I can have a roll call, please.
Miss Hannah?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
You present?
Miss Callahan Wozniak?
Here.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Here.
President Ewing?
Here, so we do have a quorum. With that, I would like a item 3A, approval of the meeting minutes for August 16th, 2022.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Motion that we accept the minutes as presented. No, you have changed.
Yeah, I do, but
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Gonzalez. Any corrections, questions, changes on the minutes?
yes, there, on one of the minutes, my name is spelled incorrectly, and I'm trying to find and Mr. Schenken's name is also spelled incorrectly. Wait a minute, it may not be on this one. Okay. I think, no, it's not this one, Mr. President.
Okay. So any other comments, questions, or changes to the minutes? If not, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are
Pass. Yeah, I got a pass. I wasn't there.
okay. So 6 yeses, 1 pass.
Or actually, Gonzalez wasn't there either.
We are now at information items. So the information has presented there. I don't see anyone present from Simpson Elite, but the information is there. We have, and I'll take these because I'm sorry. For those who may not come to every meeting, this is our committee meeting. Unlike in our normal meetings where we have a public comment, during our committee meetings, members of the public are allowed, when we get to a certain item, if they have a question or comment on, to raise their hand and wait to be called on by the board chair. And I will do that. All of these items have an attachment and information that's been shared with the public, or narrative that explains what is happening. So for the sake of time, I'll go through these items except for when there are big presentations. And if any board members or the community members have a question, they can raise their hand and I can be sure to answer it. So item 5A is approval of facility rental waiver request for Simpson Elite. The information has been presented there. I'll speak briefly, I don't want to, but Simpson Elite has been doing a lot of work with our students, and they are a group of homegrown young men, Waukegan graduates, who are doing that work. So if there are no questions on that item.
They do need to correct their COI because it has the wrong address.
Yes, thank you. We'll make note of that and correct it for next week's board meeting.
Awesome. So we got item 5B, approval of the facility waiver request for Fiestas Patrias Parade.
Just one question. Why did it, the parade already happened? And so was there a matter of timing or something that the waiver is coming to us after the fact?
Yes. Good evening, board members, staff, and community. So with this particular item, we did receive the request at the end of August. With our current school dude specialist, I have asked her, it's been our practice to bring it forward to OSC. So if there are any questions, we can discuss them before board action. However, in the future, depending on the timing of the request versus when the event takes place, we will bring it forward before an OSC meeting occurs, just to ensure that it can happen prior to the event taking place, if at all possible. But this was requested at the end of August.
All right, item 5C, approval of facility rental waiver request for Urban Edge Entertainment. This is the turkey tournament. It's a routine. It's now their 7th year that they do at the Dog Pound. All right, item 5D, new exterior sign for Lyon Elementary. Information and invoice has been presented. No questions. E, Safeway Transportation Contract Extension for the 2022-2023 school year.
Are they increasing?
Yes.
Can you put up the
The
slide?
contract?
3.5%.
Yes, ma'am. Their increase is 3.5%. Safeway has seen costs increase of up to 8%, but our increase for our district is 3.5%. I do want to remind the board that we are going to be issuing RFPs for transportation services, so this will be the last one-year extension for Safeway. Similar to what we presented in the spring with Illinois Central.
Do we have, okay, how to phrase this? The students, the number of students that use this service, right? Has the student numbers increased or have they decreased for this service?
So, Ms. Ann, I would need to bring back the specific number to you because this is for our diverse learners department as well
Right.
as our McKinney-Vento.
Right.
So we can bring that to you. This is for a maximum amount based on projected usage, but we also get billed based on mileage and the outplacements with our diverse learner staff. So it won't be this exact number, but this should cover us up to this amount for the services we are projecting to need this year. So we can come back with that specific number of students that use these services.
Thank you.
I would like to know, when a kid don't go and they come and wait outside, are we paid for the whole day? We get a discount because they don't go?
Mr. McBride, is that a transportation question or for the outplace services?
No, that's what Safeway. You're speaking about Safeway taking our kids to various alternative programs throughout the. So my question is, it's just been my observation that a lot of kids, they go to pick them up and they don't go, but at the same time, are we still being charged full price for that day, or do we get some kind of discount?
That's interesting.
Yeah,
And I'm bringing it up because it happens a lot.
yeah. So when they're scheduled to pick up students, I believe there are some minimum charges if they actually show up to the student's residence and they're required to wait for them a certain amount of time. But again, we'll clarify what that minimum charge is just to ensure the board is aware.
Okay. I was just my concern. I just think that because it happens so often, we shouldn't have to pay the full amount every time a kid don't go. And again, like I say, just my observation, I know that it happens a lot.
All right. And then item 5F is an interim service agreement for paralegal / FOIA.
And, this is for Miss Wolf. And do we know how long this service agreement will be for?
that the
And when
6
are we
weeks?
going to post this position?
So for this position has been posted, just conferring with the legal office, it's been posted. The initial term for this arrangement would be 6 weeks, just to support a certain amount of hours. I believe it states 15 hours to support FOIA responses. So initial term, 6 weeks, position has been posted. It is the district's goal to fill the position.
Okay, and I remember. Oh, okay, and so the numbers here, 5,400 and 7,200. That's the minimum and the maximum of the salary that's going to be attached to this interim position or interim agreement.
Correct. That is the projected minimum and maximum for up to 6 weeks, $15, 15 hours per week.
Okay. Okay. Now, I got some things for operations that are not on the agenda. the crossing guard at Washington Street. I'm getting complaints about that.
I would just email them unless you feel like it has to be done at this point.
Well, it was brought to my attention by a parent today, and their kid almost got hit.
I'll call you tomorrow and we'll deal with it, Ms. Hannah. I'll give you a call in the morning.
Okay, because we need some crossing guards there.
I'll call you in the morning.
Okay. And wait a minute, I got one more. Oh, also the drop-off zone at Washington.
Okay. I'll call you tomorrow. I'll have Laverne on the phone.
Okay.
All right, so Ms. Hannah just had questions about Washington specifically. They weren't on the agenda, and I don't know if the teams had time to prepare a response, but she'll reach out and talk to the superintendent. Just want that to be clear for those who are watching or in the audience. Reports are here. Same, I'll take these one at a time. The one that I do want to call out, we do have a presentation for the ESSER update. And then we have North Shore Gas Energy that's here. I feel like Johnson Controls has been at many of our meetings, so we want to make sure that today we give them the platform and the opportunity to speak about some of the great work that they've been doing. So schedule of investments has been listed. Are there any questions on the schedule of investments? Treasurer's report is there.
I'm wondering with those investments, with the feds, raising the rates and all of that stuff, what kind of impact, if any, will we be seeing on our investments, our bonds, and all those things?
All right, I saw Ms. Polk shake her head. You prepared to respond, Ms. Polk? Yes. Okay.
Board President, board members, superintendent, community members, and colleagues, we're locked in. We try to show on that document how much we were locked in for the purchase price. We've identified that. And also towards the right of that document, how much we project that we're going to get to maturity on those instruments. One of the things that I often speak to our representative about is what the current value is, right? And you'll notice that it shows that we're significantly lower than our purchase price. And she assures me that I should not be concerned because we're locked in for that right value. And we're at a place right now that we don't need the money, so we can hold out until maturity.
Just stay there.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, Ms. Polk, and thank you, Ms. Hannah. Treasurer's report has been there for information. We also have C, student activity and convenience account reports. Any questions on those items? If not, I do want Deputy Moten to speak to item 6D, the North Shore Gas Energy Efficiency Award.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So last spring, the district was honored by ComEd. We had a presentation. I believe Mr. Riddle was there, superintendent, where the ComEd awarded us a check for $1.8 million for electrical consumption reduction. We're seeing the same thing now with North Shore Gas, our main natural gas provider. So on this Thursday, Waukegan School District, and I would invite the board if you're available. It's a kind of a lengthy program. It's 9:30 to 2, but it will be at Greenbelt.
They didn't give us a 30-minute window? No, I'm just joking. Go ahead.
I think we have a 60-minute window, but there's going to be a portion of the presentation where Waukegan School District is going to be honored to be the public sector partner with North Shore Gas for the 2021-2022 year. So again, this is a great accomplishment. Mr. Kruckerberg's here. You mentioned Johnson Controls, the operations staff. We continue to make energy efficiency a priority. And again, it's a great attribute for our district to be considered the public sector partner of the year for North Shore Gas. And we all know they have thousands and thousands of partners throughout the state of Illinois they could give this to.
Go ahead,
I got a comment.
Yeah. This question.
And then I see you, Jeff.
21 to 22. So it's kind of retroactive.
Yeah, it's for the work that we've done prior to this date.
Okay.
So over the last year, roughly.
Do we have the data to show what we have been saving in terms of dollar amounts with all of the upgrades, making things more efficient, our lighting, our new boilers, all of those things? Because I've been asking this question forever, and look, I want to see some dollars that equates to the savings.
So we'd be happy to provide the information. That's something that we haven't done well in the past, but talking with Mr. Kruckerberg's team, we'd be happy to provide a presentation on that. And Ms. Hannah, just to be clear, with the work that's being done and a lot of the new equipment, particularly the mechanical equipment that's been put in, the cost savings is more of a cost avoidance measure, because the rates for utilities have gone up as well, just like a lot of different industries. So it's really more of a matter of cost avoidance. We're able to put a lot more equipment within our schools and not see the tremendous 20, 30, 40% spikes in our utility bills. But we'll be happy to put a report together and provide that information.
Mr. McBride?
I just want to say thanks to your operation team, you and Mr. Kuckenberg, because I remember when you guys first brought this to us, I was a little apprehensive about, what are they doing now? But here we are at the end. I've always believed what don't come out on the rents, don't come out in the wash or come out in the rent. So what's coming out of the rents now is what I want to hear. And I just say kudos to you, because I remember when you first started off, you talking about boilers, windows, and you were talking about various other things that you guys were doing that you say was going to be cost efficient. Even with the lighting and stuff you were talking about. And now here we are today, and you're telling me that we've saved tremendously, and then there's a presentation getting ready to be done, and then the district is being awarded. Amen. That's all I can say. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
I'd second that, and then realize those savings are cumulative. So once those new boilers are put in, and the windows and the lighting, LED lighting and all, we're not just saving for 1 year, we're saving for the future every year. And that's money that can go back into education for students. Right. Thank you.
And this is what I will say to the community. And I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Wozniak. I didn't see your hand.
No, I'm sorry. As long as we're doing reports, what about the solar field on the Superfund site? I thought we were getting a report on that soon.
So you're not going to get a report on that this evening, but we will provide one.
Thank you.
What I did want to say is to quote Mr. Kruckenberg, and to the community as well as this board, is a lot of times the work of the committee and our operations team is not sexy, right? It's not the things that you see, it's not the new fields, it's not the new auditoriums, but it's been a systematic approach to make sure that we're updating the actual nuts and bolts in our building. And so this is how we're having a conversation, and why it's important. The same way that we prioritize during the budget process, we use those same priorities in our capital improvement meetings. And so we have a lot of things that we need to do, a lot of things that we want to do, and some things that we have to do. And some of the things that are good to do, like these projects, have not only helped us save money, they've made us more energy efficient, and they've made our schools healthier places to be. So we appreciate all the work that goes into that. Again, you're not going to see that boiler, although the board sometimes gets to go in there. They look really good, right? But you may not see it, but our students definitely feel it and benefit from it, along with our staff. So thank you to all those involved. And again, I always say thank you to our partnership with Johnson Controls.
Oh, thank you.
One other request. We know that it's getting ready to, the weather is getting ready to change, get colder, and I would like to see kind of a pre-run to make sure all of our classrooms in our buildings, the heating is working properly, because that's the worst thing, where there's no heat in the classroom, and it's not by anyone's neglect or anything like that. But if we could just do a pre-run to make sure everything is functioning and it's ready for the weather, the cold weather.
Yeah. So we see a lot of head nods for those that are online. So again, thank you all. We do appreciate it, and continue to follow this, because I think it's also important what you say. It's not just a big check that's coming back. We have added air conditioners. We've added all types of things, and one of the things that I heard from community residents when we did it were about the utility cost and what that would do long term to the district. So for there to be a kind of neutral, like I say, it's not nothing.
We call it cost avoidance in the
Yes.
industry. We're not seeing the big
Say
spikes.
that again,
Cost avoidance.
avoidance.
Yeah, cost avoidance and the increase in utility rates, increase in consumption. Because when we put the equipment in, we are increasing consumption. But again, with some energy efficiency offsets, there's one major project that we never see and we never talk about, and perhaps we should report on that as well. Is the solar panel project we did. We still have those long-term solar panels in addition to Yeoman Creek that continue to feed energy and power to the grid. So all of this working together is helping offset our costs.
Good job.
Go ahead, Ms. Gillen.
I just would like to say that, with working around the district for union issues, we've had to deal with forbearance all the times. And I would like to say it is really wonderful and refreshing. Whenever he comes up here, he's always addressing people with such respect. And when he says something's going to get done, he does it. And he really does do a really nice job. Our buildings are old. They're falling apart. We get frustrated. There's crazy stuff. But I will say that when I email this man about a problem, I only email him once. And I get a response quickly. And I think we really need to recognize when people are doing a great job. So,
Absolutely.
hats off.
Thank you.
All right.
And we recognize that the buildings are old. So I do tell everybody that this is part of what is not the sexy part, is we need to repair our buildings so that our staff and students have somewhere comfortable to be. So we will continue to do that. And it is about wanting to do as much as we can, but as Ms. Polk and Mr. Kruckenberg often remind me, is we can't do it all at once. So we try, I try, but we will continue to knock it out, so we appreciate it. Next up is actually a very important update, which is our ESSER update. So we'll do that. There's one more item if there are questions, but outside of that, we then are going to close out this meeting and move to our student achievement. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask Mr. Chin to come up and provide this presentation for the ESSER update.
Good evening, Board President, members of the Board, Superintendent, colleagues, and community. My name is Nicholas Chin with the Business Office. Mr. Luosa and I will be walking you through this next set of slides in regard to providing you with the ESSER grants update. So first slide, some fast facts. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief and Economic Securities Act, otherwise known as the CARES Act, was signed into law actually on March 27th, 2020. So I'll say that again. That was signed into law March 27, 2020, and across the nation that allocated $13.2 billion to the first ESSER fund, and we commonly refer to that as the ESSER 1. The next bullet, the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021 was signed into law on December 27th, 2020. That provided an additional $54.3 billion across the nation under ESSER 2. And then the third bullet, the American Rescue Plan Act was signed into law on March 11th, 2021, and that provided an additional $122.8 billion across the nation under the American Rescue Plan Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, more commonly referred to as ESSER 3. On the next slide, you'll see a color-coded timeline. So the green boxes at the top, that's ESSER 1. Below that, the blue boxes in the middle, ESSER 2. And at the bottom, those pink-red types of boxes, that's ESSER 3. And that's showing us the general timeline of events in regard to each of those three grants. Moving on to the next. There are some differences between ESSER 1, 2, and 3. Basically, on the right of the slide, it describes those differences. They are noteworthy. Between ESSER 1 and ESSER 3, the funding increased by 10 times, and the allowable uses expanded to include learning loss and preparing schools for reopening. In addition, the deadlines to obligate the funding varies. So the obligation deadline in the second row of the chart, you can see that ESSER 1 funds, the deadline to obligate those was September of 2022. ESSER 2, the deadline to obligate funds is September of 2023. And then with ESSER 3, the deadline to obligate September 2024. And note the description of uses below. Again, basically summarizes those differences and how those funds can be applied.
Did we, Mr. Chen, our obligation deadline, September 2022. We're here now. So where are we?
Yeah, so that's forthcoming and we're good. So
Okay.
the ESSER one, we're good. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll ask Mr. Luosa to come up to continue with the next few slides.
Thank you, Mr. Chin. Good evening. So this slide notes the ESSER 1 grant, the first one that came out in March of 2020. It notes at the bottom $4.8 million that the grant allocated. We've expended that and we have been paid that. So that should answer your question, Ms. Hannah. And on the slide, you'll see that salaries accounted for almost $1,600,000, employee benefits $450,000, purchase services $1,470,000, supplies materials $690,000, capital outlay $424,000, non-cap equipment $241,000, and the breakdown by function is noted on that screen.
And Mr. Luosa, I'm sorry, you all. I just have questions.
Yes.
So with the ESSER 1,
Yeah.
we were able to use that for salaries
Right. So
and then
anytime after, I think, 3/13/20, what we did is we charged custodial salaries from 3/13/20 to 6/30/20. And that's pretty much what that salary and benefit figure is, custodian salaries.
custodian.
To clean the buildings.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Hunt.
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure. Mr. Luosa, what is the non-public school pupil services?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
So you may recall that one of the larger items that a lot of discussion revolved around with the board was those HVAC and touchless fixture improvements at Cristo Rey High School. And I personally recall some of the conversation that the board had about that was, by and large, those students attending Cristo Rey are Waukegan residents. It is in, the community's best interest, the board's best interest to, protect or make an effort to protect the health and wellness of those students and families attending Crystal Ray because they are generally Waukegan residents. So you may recall that conversation, and that was a substantial purchase that is part of that non-public school share.
Right.
And other similar items across other participating private schools such as St. Anastasia's, Most Blessed Trinity Academy, so on and so forth.
And it was also a requirement, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you. It wasn't just that we wanted to. And again, it was in the best interest of the community, but I also want to state that it was required under.
By the law.
Absolutely, correct.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good thing to remind people if they ever want to judge Waukegan students. We help each other out. Because that's a big purchase. Okay.
Thank you. All right, if there's any other questions, we'll go to the next screen. This is a digital equity grant of FY21, $919,196. Mostly used for the purchase of computers, right? Chromebooks. And again, there's a non-public school pupil services share in there. But you'll see that $919,000 was allocated to the district. We've expended the money, and we have been dispersed that money from the state.
And we don't have anything left with that, right?
Nope.
Okay.
And at the very end of this presentation, there'll be a summary slide that will note that as well.
Mm-hmm.
The next slide will be ESSER 2. This one is a $13.3 million allocation, all used in capital outlay, HVAC work. I believe the initial costs that went into this was Benny and Edith Smith Middle School for their HVAC project. And again, the $13.3 million was allocated, we've expended it, and we have been paid it from the state.
And so all of that 13 million was spent on you say facility acquisition.
Right, so HVAC renovations. So Benny and Edith Smith were two of the sites. I believe also Johnson Controls Phase 1 is in here as well for HVAC improvements, air quality.
Oh, 13 million? 13 million worth?
Yeah.
Really? That's a lot of HVAC.
It is.
For
Can we get
two
a cost
schools?
breakdown?
Right, thank you.
That's what
Mr.
Ms.
President.
Hannah is concerned about. So if you can provide it with just a
Sure.
cost breakdown.
Yeah, we can provide a breakdown of that.
Thank you.
All right. The next slide is another piece of ESSER 2. The original one was about 19 million, and then it came to a certain point where what we spent, and the rest basically we had to reapply, and it became the ESSER 2 of FY23. In this case, 5.9 million. Also allocated to facilities acquisition and construction. It's been allocated and it's been expended.
Is this in addition to the 13 million?
It's kind of a continuation of it, because originally when we got the ESSER 2 grant, it was about a $19 million grant, but they gave you to a certain point in time to spend it. And whatever you didn't spend at that point, you basically reapplied for those remaining funds. And these are the remaining funds, 5.9 million. So it's kind of broken up into two pieces. But the one was FY21, this one's FY23, so it's got a little bit later date to obligate the funds.
Right. But we should still have some of that money though, right?
Let's see. Back to the last page and see. ESSER 2, there's none left. No uncommitted balance left.
Yes, because it was 19 million, we spent the 13 million, the remaining 5.9 million, we've expended that, we just haven't gotten our reimbursement yet for that portion of it. But another piece that I wanted to mention to the board is that the board approved 30 million over 3 years that we would expend on capital improvements. A portion of this is a part of that 30 million. The source of funds may be different. You know, we may say we would have used local, but now that we have this money, and these are projects that qualify to go into the ESSER, it's a part of that 30 million. Does that make sense? Yes, the board, I think this is, last year was the last year of that 30 million, right? That the board had us do a resolution for. And so that 13 million and this 5.9 are all a part of that 30 billion that the board approved us to spend on capital improvements.
So,
Which is just what won us an award.
no, but I think it's important to talk about that and I do want to give kudos to the administrative team and with the funding, right, is because we do prioritize spending. We know what things need to be done. We have them on the list. Even if we don't have the money, right, is it over 100 million that we need to do everything? So we have a dollar figure. So typically when the district comes into, and I'm going to use it, a term, a windfall, it's not as if we have to go out and look for projects to do. We can simply go down the list to this is the next most important thing that we need to do. And so as Ms. Polk always reminds me, that was one of her concerns with these funds, is use them for the capital improvement projects because those aren't reoccurring costs. You change the windows, you don't have to do that for another 30 years, right? But if you hire a lot of people, now you have to continue that cost. So yeah, there were things already, and so those things that we had allocated funds for even before the pandemic, they used the ESSER funds to cover them. And these weren't, pork projects right there. Life safety, essential things that needed to get done that we would have had to do whether we had these funds or not.
And in saying that, Mr. President, we did have that big, massive $100 million need.
116.
Okay, and so my question is, with that $100 million list, okay, I'd like to see what we completed. Everything that we completed, while we had this money, what did we complete in the district?
Okay.
Thank you.
This is a Mr. Moulton question. Those were the list that I'm speaking of. That's the list that we had been charged with through our life safety inspection from the ROE, correct? And there were things that we needed to do, and we were doing it in phases, right? And so that's why I want to see what we completed. And am I saying that accurately?
I believe you are, Ms. Hannah. So I believe the list you're referencing is our 10-year life safety list where we had
Yes.
A, B, C1, and C2
Yes.
priorities. So the A and the B priorities were more pressing, with the A's needing to be done within a year. We did provide a presentation at the time. We can bring that back because I believe that was the 16-17 school year for the A priorities. What we've done with the capital improvement project plan is identify items that need to be done for a variety of reasons, specifically recommended items from that 10-year list that are going to become A and B priorities the next time we have our inspection, which should be the 2025-2026 school year. So the capital improvement plan, a majority of the items were generated from that list of items that weren't addressed as A priorities. But we can certainly provide an update via the superintendent or a future meeting, just so you can see the difference and breakdown of what's been completed and what hasn't from
Right.
that 10-year list.
From the 10-year list and everything that we use ESSER money for, and completed.
And even prior to ESSER.
Ms. Leguizamo.
Mr. Moulton, just to piggyback off of that, can we also get that updated list posted on the website? I know a lot of our residents are looking at that capital improvement website to see which projects are coming and what particular year, and if those projects have been completed. If we could also get that website updated, that would be great. Eventually. I know
Well,
it's a big ask right now.
That's certainly something we can explore, and we did say from the start of the capital improvement plan that, some of the projects are going to be flexible. Some of the areas of need we've identified currently, specifically as it relates to air movement and ventilation, I would say weren't at the top of the list when we developed that plan back about 4 years ago. So we've had some deviations from the list, which we've articulated year in and year out. But we'll be happy to update that, provide the information publicly, make sure that it's consistent with what's been done since that capital improvement plan's been developed and what remains.
And I guess I want clarity and just crystal clear, and so there isn't confusion when it comes forward. There was the life safety plan. That plan was then incorporated into our overall capital improvement plan. And so it's one document. It wouldn't be two separate things that Ms. Hannah is saying. Is that correct?
That is correct. However, the A priorities preceded the 10-year
They were
capital
done
improvement
already.
plan. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Next, if you guys want to continue with the presentation, please.
All right, going on to the early childhood. This is the what is also known as the Gear 1 grant. We were allocated $170,162. We expended and dispersed $167,722. Mostly in instruction, but we had also some PPE in Function 2130 Health Services. Digital 2 investment grant, Digital Equity 2. It's an allocation of $775,155. We haven't expended any of it yet, not dispersed, and we have not been paid for any of it yet. Keep in mind, I think it was brought up last week that with federal grants, which these are, we front the money for those. So we have to prove that we spent it by sending them an expenditure report to get reimbursed. In this case here, we have just, I think, done a purchase order to order the classroom carts. So we're going to start spending on this pretty soon.
But we got time.
What's that?
We have time.
Yeah, this should be good through June of '23.
Okay.
And also on that last page, when we get to it, the last slide, it'll note the grant period end date too, in a nice summarized fashion. All right, the next would be ESSER 3, and I'll let Nick talk about that.
So the ESSER 3 breakdown's a little more detailed because these are the required set-asides in the grant application, as you may recall. So we have the description in the first column, the amount of the allocation in the second column, and what that percentage is of the overall allocation in the third column. And so you can take a look at that on your own. You'll notice that under the local education agency other line, capital improvements are listed at an allocation of 8.8 million, and academics are at 25.8 million. And so we tally all of that up, and then looking at the gray summary lines at the bottom, the overall academic allocation is 41.7 million, which is approximately 82% of the 50.5 million, and then the capital improvements at 8.8, which is about 18%. Now, I will note that administration is considering potentially a $2 to $3 million shift into capital improvements. So that's a possibility on the horizon.
Excuse me? Could somebody unscramble that soup?
We have the second half of the Johnson Control HVAC projects, and because we have board authority at present of only the $8.8 million, we wanted to ask for board head nod to possibly reserve an additional, and I'll give an explanation as to why, to give an additional $2 to $3 million towards projects that the Capital Development Committee would otherwise prioritize, and we would have to use local monies for those, when in fact they're eligible cost in the ESSER grant. So it's just a matter of taking it from over here and putting it over here, but we don't have presently the authority to increase it from the 8.8 million.
Right, and when you all come to us, I certainly hope that you bring us details and not just asking us to transfer the money. And me, okay, and I'm sure that I would hope the other board members want to know why or what that additional money is going to. And I want to see that, okay?
Absolutely. We're working very closely with operations, and Mr. Chen is obviously working with me to create an updated list. And in the presentation, you will see a detailed, itemized list of what we're spending the money on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Polk. Mr. Vukovic and Mr. Alajakis is coming with the microphone.
What was that what was that amount?
What we're asking, $2 to $3 million.
Go ahead, Mr. Vukovic.
In regards to that issue, that's something that should be addressed at a public board meeting in front of the public. That's not something that a head nod is.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is not acceptable at all, and will be challenged if that's the direction you go, because there was talk about the percentages and how much was going for capital versus students.
Right.
When this was first brought out. So I hope that it comes back before this board at a public meeting that the public will have the opportunity to comment on. Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, and that's a good point. We could never make that adjustment unless we do a budget amendment, which is a formalized process. But we wanted to know, if the board would consent to us coming forward with something like that. So that's why we're mentioning it this form.
Because if the board doesn't give...
Then why do the budget amendment? Which we would have to go back through the presentation to the board, publish, have it on for review for 30 days, and then come back for a hearing, and then adopt the budget. So we're just trying to see if that's something that the board would be interested in doing. That's all.
My question would be, is it going to lessen or take away any monies for instructions, academics, that sort of thing? And if that's the case, at this juncture, can't do it.
That's a very good question. And one of the questions that you had, Ms. Hannah, for a number of the board meetings is to ensure that we expend all of those monies. And so this is a precautionary measure that we're also taking to ensure that we spend every dime of the ESSER money that we have, whether we put it in ESSER or whether we put it local, if it's prioritized by the committee, that's what the board is saying that we have to spend. So we want to make sure that we're pushing as much as the eligible cost into the grant to make sure that we're expending those monies by September of 2024.
And I respect that, totally understand that, but we should be effectively and efficiently spending the money, particularly when it comes to our students. Okay, and don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I understand the students need heat and lights and a warm building. I get all that, okay, but I'm pretty sure legislators that that came up with this money, when they said student learning loss, that's what they meant. Okay, and to address social emotional learning that took place during the pandemic, and with the amount of money that we were given for that, there should be tangible results, okay, that we're able to see from the spending of that money. Okay, so just to say we gonna spend it and it'll be gone by 2024, to me, sorry, it's unacceptable if we cannot show results in our students' enhancement in education, in their social emotional, and everything that is that we need to do for the students. Okay, so just spend money just to get rid of it, or say that we spend it.
If I could say this just to clarify.
Okay, please.
Because if you look at over the years, the amount of money that we're expending has gone up, right? So even the year before, we had 278 million. The budget that we have now is over 230 million, of which very little is going towards capital improvement. So the majority of those money is going toward instruction. So what I was trying to say is this, that we have a bucket of money over here that's local. We have a bucket of money over here that is ESSER. And so we're under time constraints with the money for ESSER, and we're unlimited with the time that we have for local. So rather than put ourselves in a tough spot when we have eligible costs that we could put over here, which is ESSER, and it's eligible and there's limited time, expend that, and then it leaves the money for local to go towards the things that you're referring to, academics and that stuff, and we're not limited by time. So it's more about putting the money at the right place, not eliminating expenditures that's related to academics, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Gillis, I saw your hand. Did you still have a question?
So,
And I'm sorry, Nick's coming with the microphone. And I see it. Just for the people online.
So if I'm understanding, 18 out of every dollar, 18 cents out of every dollar is going to capital improvements. and we're putting the money into capital improvements because we can pay that now and then have more money in our budget later for the academics?
Well, we have the money now for academics.
Well, I mean, we're putting 82 cents out of the dollar
Okay.
into the academics.
Yes.
But then once we get some of these capital improvements, you're saying that will be paid and we can put more money into the
No, I'm saying we're doing it at the same time because the local money never went away. We still have that money at our discretion. So we're able to use the local monies that we have for academics, and we're able to push more of the capital into ESSER as well as academics.
So the board can allocate a random amount, $10 million for tutoring, for example.
Right.
If we don't expend that $10 million on tutoring because either we don't hire staffing or we don't spend it within the time limit, we set the money aside, we don't get reimbursed for it, ESSER time runs out and then we can't.
No, I understand.
do it.
Yeah, I understand the ESSER timeline. I'm just wondering, can we switch between capital improvements funds and educational funds, or are we going to get hit down the road?
Right.
Because in my limited knowledge of school budgets, there's a problem between, transportation fund is here, don't mix apples, oranges, and we can't make fruit salad.
Right.
And that's just my concern with this. I understand spending the money for the capital improvements because those are not as frequently reoccurring funds. And this is a limited windfall maybe, but I'm just concerned about the budget lines and us getting caught because we have a reputation of doing excellent budgeting and getting every award for it. I don't understand how that's working. That's all.
Thank you for your concern. We're currently undergoing a federal audit, and they're in receipt of all of these expenditures. And at present, that's one of the things that I've spoken to Mr. Chen and also Mr. LaRosa about. Do we have any findings? Matter of fact, I talk to the auditors often about that. And at present, we don't have any findings related to these expenditures.
And when those reports are available,
Yeah.
I certainly hope that they will be brought to the board
Yes, ma'am.
for our viewing as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Ms. Wozniak.
The ESSER grants, one of the stipulations is that we could use up to 80% of the ESSER grant for capital improvements. So we wanted more allocated to academic improvement,
Absolutely.
but we can use up to 80% of the ESSER funds.
That was our original recommendation to the board, but we switched because of what the board wanted.
Ms. Leguizamo.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Polk, thank you for indicating that the request here to add about $2 to $3 million into that capital improvement includes the Johnson Controls portion, Phase 2 portion. The Phase 2 portion, which is really important, just kind of want to remind the board and the community that also includes the HVAC career development programming and training lab that is anticipated to go into our Waukegan High School for our students. So I just wanted to reiterate that program, that Phase 2 program. Thank you, Board President.
Johnson Control. So we can, you can bring that back. So what they're looking for now is does the board have the appetite? Doesn't mean that we are doing it now. You still can vote your conscience when it comes up, but before they expend the time, effort, and resources, they want to see if we would be willing to consider. So what I'm looking for now, would you all be willing to consider?
Sure.
Ms. Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
I want to see where the money, what the money, that 2 to 3 million is going to be used for.
100%. So when you guys come back, would that be something that you include in that
that's
presentation?
when I will vote.
Right. We're not voting right now. What they want to know is if you have an appetite to do it. Would you encourage them to go and bring it back? Mr. McBride.
And Charlotte, you made a valid point. When we was over at Brookside and we had a public meeting, that all came out. So I trust that what you're doing is right, and I understood the idea of robbing from Peter and paying Paul. It goes on all the time, and sometimes it's not right, but
It's a legal rob, though.
Since I've been sitting on this, since I've been on this board, what we're talking about is nothing new to me.
Right.
So yes.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Yes.
and same.
One-time cost, let's get out the way.
So same. So you guys do, if you bring it back again, we'll notice it, we'll do everything. The board can still vote its conscience, but they now understand that the board would be willing to consider increasing and changing those allocations.
Thank you, Mr. President. And if I could just add one thing, what you will expect to see moving forward is an amendment to the previous Johnson Controls Phase 1 work for up to $3 million. And then just like we did last year, you'll see statements of work that talk about particulars at each school. This is what's going to happen. And we'll be coming to the board for a recommendation to approve those items, just like last year. So everything will be at the forefront. Mr. Vukovic, you're absolutely right. It'll be made public before we actually execute that scope of work.
And one other question. The ESSER funds can only be used in Title I buildings?
School buildings.
It is, and all of our schools are Title I now, aren't they? Correct. Yes, all of our buildings are Title I, low-income buildings.
Okay.
No, Lincoln Center's not a Title I building.
Lincoln Center, but the schools.
All the schools. Okay, I thought so.
Okay. I know there were other slides, so if you guys want to continue with the presentation.
Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So again, this is ESSER 3. Of the 50.5 million allocated, 20.99 million has been expended and 20.1 has been dispersed. You'll see the note in parentheses at the bottom. Since July 1 of 2022, approximately $825,500 has been expended, but that hasn't been yet reflected in the ISB claim. That expenditure report for the first quarter won't be due until October 20th. Go to the next slide. So this looks similar to the budget workshop number 3 presentation because it's basically the same slide with updated figures. So through September 16, 20.99 million has been expensed under ESSER 3, and the breakdown being 14.29 million to address academic needs, student needs, and then 6.7 million spent on qualifying capital improvement projects. Next slide. And so here again, this is very similar to what was presented in budget workshop number 3, with the addition of the link in the lower right-hand corner, all the way at the bottom in the lower right. There is another sheet that shows the expenditure details of that $825,500 there for you to look at your discretion.
Does the public have this?
It's posted in the board docs.
Okay, so the public can see everything we're seeing.
Correct.
Okay.
Next slide. So with the ESSER 1, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Luoso to cover the next couple of slides.
So I had explained earlier that ESSER 2 had been kind of split up into 2 different grants. The same thing happened with ESSER 1. As of a certain time period, we had $56,988 left. We ended up reapplying for those funds. Got those funds. It was a FY22 grant for ESSER 1. And at the bottom, we've allocated the $56,000. We expended it, and we also got ISB also reimbursed us or dispersed the money.
When you say that, they disperse the money.
Dispersed means that we received the money.
We received it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The next slide would be the McKinney-Vento Homeless Investment Grant of FY22. There's a $236 million grant that's been allocated. I'm sorry, $236,000 grant that's been allocated. At this point, we have expended $47,872, and we've been dispersed, or paid $47,872.
Is
No,
that
we-
accurate, or is that accurate? Like, are we on track to spend the rest of the money, or why is it so low?
That I cannot answer. I'm not sure what the plan for that is.
Does it mean that our students, our McKinney-Vento students, are not receiving services? That's a superintendent question.
Yeah. Now, okay, are you ready to address this now, or would you like to come back to the board with it? Because we could bring this slide back and just do a presentation at soup time next meeting, if that's okay with the board, so that Mr. Berry could look into this and have accurate information.
Yeah, because this is that's a lot. I'm like Miss Gonzalez. It's such a small amount of money that's expended, and the only thing that that it indicates to me that this particular group of students are lacking something, not receiving something, or something. So I would like to also see where this money is expended, detailed on how this money was spent, and so that we could see, you know, where more services need to be given, or you know.
You want, yeah, it's on the same topic. So much like we were talking earlier about the moving the money, an example is the tutoring. We budgeted an amount that we were not able to spend. We over budgeted, and it's a similar situation that these are the ESSER funds that were budgeted for this. It doesn't mean that other funds weren't dispersed to address what we were talking about in terms of tutoring or for McKinney-Vento. Do you want to add?
I have a question. Isn't that ESSER 3, and we've got till September 2024 to spend that money?
Part of that.
Okay.
So we've got time.
Absolutely.
We're not panicking.
That's what.
But also, I wanted to mention that that department has a budget. That was one of the priorities that the board president asked us
Absolutely.
to identify, and we
Right.
made sure during the budget process we highlighted that. So they have a budget that's greater than 236.
Okay.
But it's concerning when you've got about 2/3 of it listed under other. That's a lot. 2/3 of the money that's spent is under other support services without any clarification.
Right, and that's what I'm asking for a detail on where and how that money was spent.
Okay, and I got two things that'll help you. This year, McKinney-Vento got an additional grant. Mr. Joe Cleary and I work with Lake County Row, and they gave us an extra $50,000. But we have to spend that money by June 30th. So we didn't pull it from here because we had a deadline for that money. Also, to let you know, McKinney-Vento students are having a resource fair this Friday and Saturday. We have clothes, we have food, everything is there for them, but we can only give that to the McKinney-Vento family. So they're getting an invitation only. It's going to be Friday from 11 to 6 and Saturday from 9 to 1 at the Welcome Center. So they are receiving services. We're making sure that's happening.
And would that be considered these other supports?
Yeah, I
Those,
just,
those are contractual obligations that would fall into that category.
I'd like to see, as I said earlier, I'd like to see a detailed, itemized,
Of course.
list of what that
We can bring that back.
money, went for.
Sure. No problem. Thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
Whenever everybody comes back for this next board meeting and this subject is to be addressed, will we, the community, be able to also interact the same as we would today? Or will it be something different because it's not this setting?
It would be a normal board meeting, so board meeting procedures would apply.
I'm not okay with that. If we have the ability to ask questions and interact now, we should have that same ability then, because otherwise it looks as if we're being silenced and we won't be able to have that interaction. And I have questions now, but I'm not going to bother with those questions because they've already requested to come back to another time. So I don't know if you guys have the authority as a board to make the exception to the rule. It's not our fault that we're not able to have that interaction. So I guess I'm asking that the board, collectively, you guys can do what you want. Make an exception
Yeah,
because it's not our fault.
It's not time
Right.
sensitive. If we want to hold the item over to the next committee meeting, or we can talk about structure, I don't know what'll be presented or how much time. So that'll be a question when you talk about forum. Because if we are saying we want to have the opportunity to ask questions, then a solution to that is to address this topic at the next operations meeting. It was brought up here at a committee meeting. If we wait till next month, we address it at a committee meeting.
So it'll be held until then.
That's fine. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we can talk about when.
We can make a presentation. We'll come back and make a presentation on McKinney-Vento at the next student achievement. Mr. McIntyre.
All right, the next slide would be another early childhood grant. Allocated $27,250. We have expended $23,650, and we have not been reimbursed that yet. We have to file an expenditure report to get that. The last page that I've been alluding to throughout the meeting gives you a nice summary of the grants that we've presented tonight. Noting the allotment, what we've expensed, what we've been reimbursed or dispersed from ISB, and the grant period, what's the ending grant period. And the last column would be the uncommitted balance of funds remaining. So you see the first five don't have any funds left. We spent it all. Digital equity still has all of it to spend, and I said we just started utilizing those funds. ESSER 3 still got about $29 million left, and McKinney-Vento $188,000, and early childhood $3,600. So it's a nice summary. So any other questions?
No, I just want to say, Ms. Polk and your team, I like the way that you formatted this, and the only thing is I'm looking for details.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yeah, so and I think it might help the questions that people have been raising about the items, the itemization of everything. This uncommitted 30,000 that we have a couple, like a year or two to use. Was that considered when we made the budget for next year and part of those like spreadsheets of the things that people requested? So it's okay.
Yes, it is, because what we do during the budget process is we don't put labels on it in terms of source of funds.
Okay.
We will identify what the priorities are, and then based upon those priorities that fit into those different sources, and in this particular case, ESSER 3, we put it in there, and most of it is related to academics
Okay,
in the schools.
okay.
Non-positions, I have to say that.
Yeah.
Non-positions.
So it may be helpful to blow that up, because it was a link in the
Yes.
presentations, but
Yes.
we, we don't see that. So just to blow it up at least once so that people see it, because even in the presentation, it was hard to click on it and blow it up, reaching up. I'll send it again.
Yes, because even that 29 million that's there, it's in that greenish blue color, because if you click there, it has all of the details linked there. So the
Okay.
community can see what has been budgeted,
yes.
what Mr. Chin has made revisions in the initial budget, everything is right there.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Polk.
Mr. McIntyre?
Am I correct that what I just agreed to was the next operations meeting, which is a full month away?
Mhm.
That's the earliest that we can get this information?
It's not the earliest you get this information, it's the earliest that you'll be able to ask questions.
That's only because you guys want it that way. You can allow it to be done at any time. Do you not have the authority to do that as a board?
So, can I say something?
I'll go in keeping with my practice is the student achievement meetings and operation meetings are one format, and the board meetings are different. So as a board, we could change our format, but that throws it off to make an exception for just this one meeting, and to be fair, and so that I don't have to make different decisions depending on either who is coming from or the source or the topic, is we kind of keep those meetings set, right? So this information, while it's important, is not necessarily urgent, right? The money has been set, it's been allocated, and we want to make sure to provide the opportunities, which was a valid point, is if this format is when you all had the questions, then in a format like this is when you should be allowed to ask them. And if I bring it back at the earliest opportunity, which would either be next Tuesday or the first Tuesday or the second Tuesday of October, that wouldn't allow for that back and forth for members to have questions. So when you say, can we? Yes, but as of right now, I wouldn't be changing the entire format of the way we traditionally do meetings, because I want the public to know the cadence. Whenever I go from that cadence, people complain.
I think that's why I bring up about the spreadsheets, because you could go on this is all available right now. You can go onto our board docs, go to the document, open it up, and see our budget meetings and the items that people requested in the presentation. But if you want to ask questions specifically about those items, that's different, right? So you could see the items as they were presented, but having the administration answer questions, that's, we'd have to convene in a meeting and have a quorum.
And we have to be flexible as well.
Oh, I agree. I think, I 100% agree. As flexibility wasn't the issue, I think it was fair to say, I want to be able to ask her questions, and I want to give that opportunity, which is the next board, Student Achievement and Operations meeting.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to hearken back to, with this, the same topic about information and questions. Now, we keep hearing the front side, can we ask questions? Well, if you ask a question, you should be entitled to an answer. And so I'm going back to a citizen came to the podium and asked about questions that the public asks about, and they never get answers. And so I'm kind of feeling what Mr. McIntyre is talking about, because questions should be answered. And whatever format that we need to make sure that we're answering the public's questions, I think that we should try our best to be able to do that in a reasonable time period. That's and am I, Mr. McIntyre, kind of hitting on what you're saying?
You are. I mean, there are. I don't like asking questions to people that are unprepared to answer the questions. I think it's kind of wrong to do.
Right.
So, to me, if they've already acknowledged that they're not in a position to answer those questions, that's problematic to me. And I think that I should not have to wait for the answers to my questions, and I want to dig into it. And that's what these settings are for, and they should not be delayed if the reasoning for the delay is being unprepared. That's not a knock on them. They're just not in a position to respond, if I'm understanding correctly. Why? There's a reason, but nonetheless, that shouldn't be a reason for me not to receive the answers that I'm looking for as soon as possible.
Yeah, Mr. McIntyre, I don't think it's that they're ill-prepared to respond. The meeting was on the ESSER update, and so we pulled a component out of this that you would like to dive deeper into it. And so in all fairness, the team that would run this program, some of them aren't here, or others are just walking into the board meeting and are cold and not ready to have this discussion yet. So that's why we're asking just for a little more time so that they can pull that together on exactly what funds they are. And I don't know, I don't see here if the next student achievement meeting, we could do that also.
And I want to go to Ms. Wozniak, but
I was just going to suggest, could we show how the link works? Could Mr. White click on that?
Won't work on 188.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's not there for 188, but it's there for the other one.
Right.
And I think that may be important too, Mr. McIntyre, is I know you said you had questions, and so we assume that they wouldn't be prepared, but I don't know what your questions are. So even that way, if they come back, I don't want them presenting something that you don't even have a question on. So even if you want to take this forum an opportunity to ask your question, at least that way when they give you the information, it'll be what it is that you're looking for.
I don't.
Okay.
You know, I think Teresa hit on a good point, and not to neglect the idea of you sitting there and you asking questions. I heard her say she can get a team member, well, you don't have to wait to sit down with you, and if there's some concerns concerning to this subject, they can explain that to you.
And I also, sorry, not to chime in, Mr. McBride, but, Mr. Berry said, hey, the reason we didn't spend that much is because we got an extra $50K that we didn't expect. And that's good enough for me. Hey, the more money we get, the better for this program. That means that we have more money to spend next year. That it doesn't end until next year, right? 2023, yeah. So.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it is a lot of money that we need to expend, so I'd rather spend it.
But that's to your point. You asked a question and you like for it to be answered, and you made a valid point. But Teresa, once again, I'm gonna reiterate. She gave a suggestion that whatever your concerns is, you don't have to wait till the next board meeting, or you don't have to figure out for us to take a nod or to make that decision. Someone can sit down and you can ask all the questions you want, because you may have some concerns. I totally understand your concerns relating to this particular area of budget. I've listened to all the rest of them, so I do understand where you're coming from. And you may have some concerns, but because number one, this particular department it's been a lot of moving around, and some things ain't where, like it used to be. So that might be why, one reason too, till they get back up to par to where they were before. Again, like I say, the department has been moved around. And again, I'm sure that Mr. Berry or whoever Teresa delegate to talk to you that have knowledge about the question that you asked, it wouldn't be a problem.
To your point, Mr. McBride, because you kind of make the point, there's been a lot of activity in this department, right? there are a number of people, I don't know, some 500 families, McKinney-Vento, homeless families in the district, right? And if this much money is left over, it makes me wonder what possibly is being neglected.
And that's,
That's the information that I want, right? So, again, I didn't want to go into the details of it, but there are a lot of needs that those families have. There are a lot of needs of different individuals that department services. And it makes me wonder if some of the activity that you allude to have had an adverse effect on that population of young people, specifically the young people and their families that depend on that department. So that's why I was going with it, but I'm willing to wait on the superintendent and whoever the staff member is that's going to give me more details on it.
Yeah, and just note that it's not lost yet. We still have time to expend the monies. So this isn't lost money yet. We could use it throughout the year, but we'll explain that with you when we meet.
All right, any other questions related to this item? All right, can you get the agenda back up on the screen? So we also have item F, which is the itemized compensation report per Public Act 960434. Question, Ms. Vukovic? Can we bring the microphone?
oh, yeah.
In looking over this report, there's some information that isn't on here that has been in the past, primarily the health insurance that's paid for employees, particularly if somebody wants to go through this report and see certain employees, such as a classroom teacher, that has to pay a higher percentage of their salary or the premiums for health insurance versus administration that has a greater amount paid for. That's in the past has been shown. The only expenditure under health insurance is $12,000, and that's for one employee that contractually you've agreed to pay for their dependent care or something like that. And then the other thing is for the Social Security. There are some employees that I believe have their Social Security, what they pay, what the employee normally pays, that by contract the district is paying. So if we're going to have this report filed, it should show those numbers that way, and I believe in the past it has shown that. So thank you.
So hopefully we're sticking with that format, right?
Do you want to speak to Ms. Pope?
Yes, there is an intent when we come back for board approval to have that
Maybe talk
information.
in the mic for the...
Yes, there is an intent to have the healthcare benefit, life and dental information included in the report when the board approves it, but we needed to bring the shell of information to the board because it has to be adopted by the board before October 1st. And so we want to post it by October 1st. That was one of your things you brought to the board. And we want to ensure that we meet that timeline. And so as a precursor, we're presenting the salary information with bonuses for total compensation with the exception of the benefits.
But that's going to be included.
That will be included on the board agenda item at the next board meeting.
Okay, and that's the one that is going to be because that has to be published, doesn't it?
October 1st.
Yeah, not right. On the website, and it used to be before all this technology. It used to be put in the local newspaper.
That's the ASA.
Okay.
That's different.
That's different.
But this is a different statute. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
But you're correct, Ms. Hannah.
Thank you.
Ms. Logozamo?
I notice in this report that there are a few lines that look like they're duplicate lines. I just wanted to make sure that the team understood about those duplicate lines, or if those were intentional or not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe repeat.
Mrs. Leguizamo, can you ask your question again, please?
She was talking to me.
Sorry, in the report, I noticed that there were several duplicate lines with the same salary. It seemed like they were duplicate lines. I don't know if this report still needs to get
I need
scrubbed
to
through
look at
to
it.
identify, but I eyeballed at least a good 6 duplicate lines. If you do a quick pivot, it'll probably show you all the duplicate
Yeah,
lines in there.
let me look at that.
Um,
Because those may be individuals with .5.
Mhm.
I need to look at it, what their FTE is. I need to look at it again.
Okay. All right, thank you for that.
Any other comments on that one?
All right, with that, I'd like a motion to
Board
adjourn.
President? Sorry, before we adjourn, here, I know we kind of skipped over the, discussion items. I just wanted to bring forward, a few questions really quick. I wanted to ask the group, probably Mr. Moulton here, in regards to, do you have an update on the timeline for the RFP for the food service and telecommunications? If you don't have the answer now, you can come back to us later.
For the food service, the timeline, the start of the timeline, we're aiming for November to issue an RFP. I do not have an update on the telecommunications.
And before we go, that's operations too.
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
Okay, I'd like to get an update on our phone system, because there's still phone numbers that I'm calling that when I call, the call fails, and I want to know where we are in completing our getting our phone system back online and back to normal.
Yeah.
Can I?
So, Dr. Cuevas is here to provide an update on that, or Dr. Cuevas, if you're ready, we can do it this evening, or we can.
Yeah, we'll come back with that.
Okay.
Is that okay? You
Yeah,
sure? Because this is
I wrote
the
it down.
second time
Yeah,
that
no-
I've asked that.
No, we'll come back with that. We'll come back with the food update and the telecommunications update.
Is that the same as you're talking about?
Yes.
Yours is a little bit more, yours is a lot more comprehensive. Mine is in regards to the RFP process,
Yeah.
but what Ms.
No,
Hannah is
I'm
asking
talking
is
about is
Right.
the
what's
immediate
today. Yes,
today.
exactly.
know
We'll
about
address the
that.
RFP and where we are with how we're servicing our buildings, so we'll pull them both together.
And Board
So I guess
President,
my question to that goes back to the point that Mr. McIntyre made. Well, I guess it wasn't on the agenda, so I'd be comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda.
But if we can have that at soup time, because that is important. We still have parents that are reaching out and
Right.
concerns.
That's fine.
yeah.
And that's why I want to
Yeah,
know.
Ms. Hannah's is definitely more comprehensive. And the other thing that I just wanted to discuss with the board, board president, is I know I've been talking with you in regards to the type of reports that I'd like to see as a board member. And I haven't brought this up with the board for discussion, but I wanted to talk about in our financial reports, if we can start taking a look at all of the grant monies that our schools receive, and if we are in compliance with the grant requirements, right? There are a few grants out there that have stipulations to them, and we have previously, a few years ago, lost a few grants, grant money. I'm going to say one grant in particular, because we were not in compliance with the grant requirements. So I like to make sure, and I think that this is a board action to make sure that the financial monies are being used the way that they're supposed to be used. If we have consensus on the board about getting a type of report of such.
Yes, and also because in grants and with grants requirements, it's things are wrote into a grant application, and I'm getting this from years of doing that, right? But it's wrote in the application, and we have to stick with what was put in the application in order for us to stay in compliance
Right.
with the grant monies and fundings that we get. So I concur with that.
Yeah, is there anybody who will be opposed to this? I guess I can work with Ms. Leguizamo and the superintendent, because I think that's a very broad topic, to figure out how you would like, and the board would like to see that information, because to Ms. Hannah's point, I don't expect us to review each individual grant application,
Right.
but to know how much, similar that we saw tonight, how much have we expended related to how much was either reimbursed, and then we can know when there are any issues. So we can talk about what that looks like, but going through and reviewing the enormous amount of different grants that different schools get used, I think we can talk about that further. But the superintendent,
Yeah, because it's some of the requirements is even beyond monetary. You know, it's also contract implementation type of thing.
In kind,
Mhm.
getting
So yeah,
services, all
we
that
can
stuff.
definitely talk in depth more about what that looks like, and if the board is okay with that, you know, I'd like to see that we're monitoring and making sure that those are all in compliance, and we're doing our due diligence. You know, and I know I talked about the grant monies, but I also wanted to bring up even the usage in regards to the SBB. I have seen the numbers of what that looks like annually, as to how much monies we're looking, how much is being used out of the SBB. And from a board perspective, I think that is a very interesting number for us to review. To me, how I interpret that is we budget a particular amount, right, at each school building, let's say $1 million at each school building. And let's say that they're using only 700,000 of that monies. And so, you know, when we are expecting them to do their SBB, their budgeting at each school building, I'd like for them to be at a particular high percentage of usage of that, right? I'd like them to be at 100% usage. But there are some things occur throughout the school year where they won't be able to implement everything at 100%. And so that's why sometimes the budget is not utilized at 100%. And this is where SBB comes into play. And so what we need to understand from the school board is, from year to year, how does that impact into our SIPs, our school improvement plans, right? What is it that was lacking of in that year and moving on? So one of the other reports I was going to also ask is, and this will be maybe a quarterly, is an SBB update as to how each school building is progressing with their money utilization. So I just wanted to have that conversation with the board.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's good.
thank you. We can take that back, because SBB is also new, so we will talk about how those reports come forward. So thank you, Ms. Leguizamo. With that, I would like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McBride, second was Ms. Wozniak. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. If we can meet back here at 7:45.
Oh my goodness.
Giving us this?
This is a game changer.
All right, I'd like to call to order the June, that's the minutes. The September 20th, 2022 Waukegan Public School Student Achievement Committee meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Mr. McBride?
Here.
Mr. Riddle?
Present?
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Here.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Present.
President Ewing?
Present. I'm going to ask that there's only one item, but I'm going to take them separately just in case. So if I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 21st, 2022.
I make a motion.
Motion by Ms. Hannah.
So moved. Second?
Second by Mr. Riddle. Any comments, questions, correction to the minutes?
Yes, this is the one, Mr. President, that I was talking about, the need to changes, in the, under 5A. My name is spelled incorrectly. Could you please change that? And also, let me see, go down further. Oh, and Mr. Shinkins' name needs to be spelled correctly. Every place that his name is, they have spelled it incorrectly, and we need to get the correct spelling for his name to enter into the minutes.
Okay, so we got a motion to approve with those corrections. And a second. Mr. Riddle, do you still keep your second?
Yes.
All right. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. And we have minutes from the August 16th, 2022 Student Achievement Meeting.
August what?
August 16th,
Right.
2022. We have a motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve.
Motion by Ms. Hannah.
Second.
Second by Ms. Wozniak. Any comments, questions, correction to the minutes?
I wasn't at that meeting, so I'm going to pass.
All right. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. 6 with 1 pass. All right. We are at discussion items, intervention and tutoring service from Hey Tutor. It's a presentation.
All right. Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, members of the board, members of the community, and colleagues. I'm going to ask our Director of Teaching and Learning, Jennifer Rice de los Sanchez, to come up and speak to you about Hey Tutor.
Good evening, Board President, Board of Education, Superintendent Placencia, community, and colleagues. Thank you for having me this evening. This evening, I'd like to present to you about the opportunity through Hey Tutor for intervention and tutoring support for our schools. On slide 2, you are going to see how this directly impacts our student achievement, and the overarching intent of this is working directly with each and every school and their MTSS teams to use and to coach with them to use their data to choose the students for this program, but under the umbrella of all their intervention and tutoring programs. So they use their MTSS process for their interventions and for their tutoring. And this is one of the avenues and veins in which we can support students. And so on slide 2, what you're going to see is more detail with the rationale and the high dosage intervention and tutoring for student achievement. And what we're looking for within Hey Tutor, and what Hey Tutor can provide for us, is in-person tutoring. And what we've selected intentionally is for schools to choose between 1-to-1, should they want to, they can, up to 1-to-3, so very small groups, so we're talking tier 3. And we're looking at data within the first percentile. So that could be the first percentile of our lowest achieving, and the opportunity to also have our first percentile or our 5th percentile of our highest achieving for our exceeds. All those are opportunities for the schools to use their data and what we'll coach each of our schools with.
Ms. Hannah.
Yeah, could you, you talk about the percentile.
Sure.
Could you please explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I'm a third grader, and I were to take NWA, which we just did this past month, in which we have this data that we're going to use for this, students that would fall into a percentile, if I were to fall into the first percentile, it means that 99% of all other third graders are outscoring me in third grade.
So wait, if I lined all the kids up by their scores, 99 of them would be ahead of me, and I would be the last one in line.
And I would be, as based on this test, the lowest one scored within this particular test. It takes this test, absolutely.
Okay, and so you're focusing on the students in the first percent.
Yep, our neediest, most intense needs students, as well as the opportunities for students that are exceeding. So I could be in the 99th percentile, right, in third grade, based on my number, and I am outscoring 99% of all other third graders that have taken this assessment as well.
And clarifying question, because I think you did a good job explaining, just relates to all other third graders, right? Is that all other, and I'm saying third grade because that's the example you gave. Would this be all other third graders in Waukegan, or all other third graders who took the NWEA test?
Nationally.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's not just saying this was a student who scored the lowest in this class. There could be multiple students who were in that 1% category.
Correct. As a teacher, and as a principal, when I pull these reports, let's say one classroom in third grade, what we pull reports to say is we have all the students' names, and it gives what their percentile is. And we could have 5 students that are in the 1st to the 5th percentile out of our classroom. We could have, on average, and this is pretty true to form, I would say, we would have about maybe 10 to 12 students in one classroom that are falling between the 6th to the 18th percentile. A lot of times, or even through the 23rd, a lot of times that can form our classroom bell curve. And then we would say of this one classroom, with all these students that took this assessment in September, we have an average of 60% of our students in this class that are falling between the range of the 6th percentile to the 23rd. And so what schools do is they use that data, which is part of their process of MTSS. They use that data to say, listen, I'm going to focus my intervention teachers on this percentile to this percentile, whether it be in literacy, reading, or math. And it's these kids by name and face. And this is how many times they're going to get this, 20 minutes a day, and they start to define what the intervention would be. And so with this intervention, it's this particular support is to define the need for our neediest, most intense group of students that need Tier 3 instruction, and we'll support and coach all of our schools. And it can look a little differently for schools. That's the important thing to know, and I've been speaking with you all and hearing you all year. It is about differentiating for schools. But most importantly with this program is that it's in person. We can define it and craft it a little bit at each school when we work with them. It is progress monitored. So our intention with this, which is why you have a pretty detailed plan in front of you, our intention for this is that we know kids by name and face all year and can track their progress so that we can really show the effectiveness of this program and or modifications that we may need to as we continue to coach schools through their MTSS process.
Okay. Question. Okay, I am a firm believer, true believer, if a child can read fluently, a child will do well, math, science, social studies, geography.
Yes, ma'am.
Everything. Okay. And so, with saying that, with all of the tutoring, how much time is being spent teaching our children how to read? Okay, the tutoring is fine. Okay, before tutoring, how much time? Because we're gonna keep, and please just let me say this. We keep expending funds on this program and that program, and we're still getting mediocre results on our testing, right? And then we spend some more on another program and another program. I believe, and I've been working with children and people, teaching them how to read forever. Teach the children to read. Focus on the ABC sounds, putting letters together, developing sentences, how to structure a sentence, the comprehension, and then I truly believe, I'll almost guarantee that our scores will go up. And until we do that, we're just going to be chasing ourselves around and around and around. And if we just focus on teaching our children to read.
You're absolutely right. And I think we've invested, I'm sorry, Board President, were you going to say something?
I think to that point, from my time on this board, and I want to give kudos and shout out to Ms. Hannah, as it relates to that is part of what this board saw, and one of the things that the superintendent has been working on since she got here is improving core instruction. It's because if you improve core instruction, hopefully you have less number of kids that need these intensive supports. So I think that is what the focus is, but if I'm not mistaken, what you all are asking for is we're going to keep working on core instruction because that is the only way that you shift the inverted triangle, which I've heard about time and time again, but that you have to support the students that right now aren't meeting where they need to be. So I want to affirm what you're saying, Ms. Hannah, is that is where the work has been. A lot of work has been put on improving core instruction, but even if we're improving core instruction, we got to make sure that we're supporting students. So I guess part of the concern is this just another program? Is this just another Band-Aid that we are putting on that won't actually solve the problem?
Sure.
If I'm understanding it right,
And I'm sorry, Ms. Kibble, can you bring the microphone? And then raise your hand so that I can make sure that I see you. I don't want to forget anybody.
Meanwhile, they're bringing the microphone. Dr. Cesar, can you also spend some time on the tutoring programs we went with last year and how the ineffectiveness we've seen on the in-person tutoring that we feel would be more effective for our students?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say is that, core instruction is hitting it. CKLA, TutorMate, we're focused on phonemic awareness early on. It's it's multiple strategies, it's not just one. And to your point about bringing in programs that are not effective, we've been evaluating them. One of them was Varsity Tutors. Not to say that it's an ineffective program, I want to make sure that I'm being very clear. It didn't work for Waukegan Public Schools.
What about paper?
Paper, we've had good feedback for what paper is, but it's very different than what Varsity Tutors and Hey Tutor offer. It's on demand, so it's one point in time for a student that needs homework help or help with a particular problem. Whereas both varsity tutors and Hey Tutor is you're spending an extended amount of time with the student. There was a pre-test, there's a post-test to progress monitor. The main difference here is we didn't, the feedback that we received from our principals was that they felt that their students were already on the computer too long, and having something that was, you know, computer-based, even though they were interfacing with a live, real person, still wasn't as effective, and that was that interpersonal. We spoke about SEL, and so we took that feedback and looked for another vendor that had something that was in person. That was the primary focus, that it's in person, that they could differentiate, and that we were focusing very targeted on the neediest students using this MTSS data, but also addressing students that were who needed enrichment as well, so that we weren't leaving anyone out. And so we continue with paper, we continue with our teacher and para tutor services, so at their local school, when they know we can do small group, large group, and this allows us to also do small group, but also one-on-one in person. And I think that's the biggest difference, is we didn't want to continue with the product, even though it was already approved, even though it's ESSER funds. We wanted to make sure that what we were doing and what we were utilizing was effective and was meeting the needs that as they were presented to us. And so this was MTSS, this was teaching and learning, it was EL, it was DL that sat together and vet this, you know, something I found, looked into it, but it was a team decision looking at the feedback that we received, what this particular vendor provides, and if it were to meet what our intended goal was. Do you want to add anything to that? Okay.
And that's great.
I think Ms. Gillen had a question. Ms. Gillen, and then I see you, Mr. Riddle.
Will this be during class, during the school day, or not? And when you're talking about the bottom 1%, typically those were students that were getting DL services. So, and sometimes the kids in DL services weren't eligible for tutoring, but now as we're shifting, so how will that be? And so this is going to be the bottom and our gifted are going to get some help. Okay.
It's important to talk about how they shift in and out too, right?
Yes, so to answer your question, absolutely, Ms. Gillen. And also agency for schools to use their data. Like this is all there and all could be that, and knowing that each school is a little bit different, that they might say, hey, our data in third grade, Jen, within our first percentile, there's not a lot out of our 60 kids. And so why don't we look at a different grade, and or why don't we shift to the grade band? So that's what's important with this support, is the flexibility to use our data and to differentiate between schools, and also that enrichment piece. And yes, Ms. Gillen, as far as looking at our first percentile, if we were to look at this third grade classroom, and perhaps this third grade classroom could have 5 students that are in the first percentile, 2 of those students could have an individual's education plan. And so when you're really working with the MTSS teams and you're building their capacity around data and looking at students that need it, it is the agency to say that this student really needs it, and or didn't receive it before. And so this is what we'd like, and we want to progress monitor the growth, because the goal of this is that every student selected within our intentional grades is going to meet their growth goal, right? And so that's what we're going to track.
My question is, will DL students, yes or no, be eligible for this? Because in the past, sometimes when a kid is getting special education services, there's other services that they're not. In the past, some of the students that were getting DL services aren't eligible for this, and this is, as we're mainstreaming more children and being much more selective in who is getting DL services, are the students who are on the cusp going to be eligible? Because if you say 1%, Is it 1% based upon the school's decision? Is it 1% across? Because I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing the bottom 1% and I'm hearing the school's discretion.
So I think a couple things here. That one is we're not being selective about who receives an IEP. That's based on the data and it's based on need. I would just want to be very clear on that. No one's being selective about it. It's based on what the student's needs are, and if a student merits an IEP, then they receive an IEP. And she was, and I don't want to speak for Jen, but she was using an example. It doesn't have to be the bottom 1%. I think she was just talking about the neediest students, and it's relative to the student group and the building. There has to be some flexibility locally in terms of how services are being provided, but this is for all students. So and the one thing that we don't want to do is we don't want to duplicate services. So if there's a student that's already receiving a similar tutoring service or something like that, then we want to make sure that we are we're providing services for all students. But if we see that the student has a 504 or an IEP, they will not be excluded because they have a 504 or an IEP, or if they are an EL student. As I think we opened with the fact that this is for all students, primarily with this particular intervention, we're focusing on our students that are neediest students based on MTSS data, and those students flow in and out of that based on where they're at with whatever particular concept they're engaging with, whether it be in reading or in math, giving students what they need when they need it, because they might not always be in tier 3, and it might only be for math and not for reading. So I think that these are excellent questions, and I'm glad we're able to clarify. But again, it's just another tool that we're using, another resource that we're using to serve our students. Tutoring was a research-based strategy, high-dosage tutoring, post-pandemic. That was a highly touted research-based intervention to regain learning loss. And so that's something that we engaged in, and looking at ways that we could hit this in multiple ways. So small group, individual, and large group. I think,
Dr. Cesario,
yeah.
so if I'm hearing you right, Margot, I'm just going to answer the question. The answer is yes, that diverse learner students will be able to participate
Yes.
depending on, I guess, the targeted focus of the school, right? So if it was that third grade band and there was DL students in that band, they would be able to take part in this position, initiative.
Yeah.
So yes. I think you were looking for a yes or no. It's a yes.
Yeah.
I did give a yes.
Yes.
I know. I wanted to make sure you responded to Ms. Gillen. I had Mr. Riddle next, and I see Ms. Wozniak and Ms. Gonzalez. Mr. Riddle?
Okay. First off, I'm really happy that we are, along with Ms. Hannah, that we are doing in-person tutoring. I think that is so much more valuable to our students. I have several questions about this group. One is, where are we going to get the tutors from?
So, yes.
Go ahead.
When we spoke with them, that was really our first question, and especially kind of being a part of the process last year and listening to our board and really the needs of our community, and how do we open up the tutors, right, and the intervention support to our community first. And that is definitely one thing that Hey Tutor would do out of the gates, right, is how do we open this up for Waukegan and start filling positions there and training positions there, and then reaching further to Lake County. But that is their intention, and that's our intention out of the gate.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
you're looking at, from what I see below, it looks like 2 tutors per elementary school, 5 per middle school, and 15 at the high school campus. So you're talking about
Correct.
70 tutors.
60.
Or 60 tutors, possibly.
Yes.
That's a lot of people. Are we not, what sort of the criteria are they requiring? They're not requiring, I presume, teaching degrees?
No, but to answer that short, and I can get all the criteria and the bullet points for the job description for
They
sure.
are experts in their content area.
Yeah, and we train them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and then my other question is, when do we actually think this would begin? Would it be this year? Would we get tutors available? And how would they interface with our teachers? Would we offer this to some of our teachers with a stipend? I mean, how are they Is that a
So
possibility?
the when question is, in speaking with them, and if this is approved, the when question would be, we would begin the hiring process into October, right? But that also is very important because we do need time with each of our 24 schools to, we're talking about individualized coaching for MTSS teams to look through all their intervention and tutoring programs, not just, hey, tutor. After-school tutoring,
Right.
IST intervention support. We have multiple MTSS supports within a school. And so this is a vein and track that we can support students under the umbrella of many. And so it's really important to our MTSS team that we start to kind of see exactly what's happening, which kids are within this, and how we're progress monitoring their growth so we can share it with our community so that the students can celebrate it. And really in hearing this board, I think that speaks to what we're talking about budgetarily, right, within our SBB. So the second question that you...
Go ahead, sorry.
The second question that you asked is if we can open it up to our teachers. The thing about this is that it is during the day. So, and this is within MTSS, this is in addition to what students receive in their core. So, Ms. Hannah, to your point, what I'd like to meet with you later, right, not within this, but I'd like to really answer your question and to show you how much time is going to reading and to literacy at each and every grade, as well as to each and the master schedule within our phonics and our comprehension and our reading. I'd love to share that with you. So I want to make sure that you get that answer.
Right. We have
Yes.
I have another question. Okay, so if this is pull-out, so the kids are losing something, class time that's important, that a teacher feels is important.
Yeah.
So if it's during class time, it's kind of like the problem we had with some of our reading specialists before. They pulled students out, and teachers didn't like that because the kids missed stuff. But my other thing is, and I think this is important, where has this organization, this vendor, come from, and what kind of track record do they have?
So the first question that you asked is that it is pull out, and so when do we find time? So that's part of our MTSS process. It always starts with the master schedule. Step one, what is the structure for it, right? So we do have a intervention block within our elementary schools, and it's what I need. So it is an acronym, what I need, which I know we was talking about, what does the acronym mean on this board? But it is a win time, which is individualized time for students to meet their needs. And so in elementary school, we can use that time. In 8th grade, for our middle school, it's a little trickier because our block schedule is quite hindering and there is not an intervention time. And that's part of what we're looking at within our middle school redesign. It is very important to give students what they need. So that's going to require a little bit of problem solving within our 5 middle schools. But one opportunity is that can be an after school. It could be a before school. We could look at like an A-B flip, but it really is going to require a little bit of problem solving, and that's part of the MTSS process. For high school, we're really looking to target at our first period, our 0 hour, for students that need additional support. And what we're thinking out of the gates to even meet with the MTSS leaders at our high school is we look within Algebra 1. Right, because we know our data there, we know it's a gatekeeper, and how could we offer what we've been talking about at our graduation policy, an additional scoop and intervention support at that 0 hour in high school, and we could do this in really intense small groups for select students that the school would choose and that we would track to see if this is indeed effective and they meet their growth.
So my last question.
And then you asked also, I'll get I don't know offhand where they were. I can get all that to you because they have sent it to me. I don't have it with me right now.
And we can get that to the board. But Jen, can I ask just a clarifying question, because I know we are live right now on YouTube. But so did you say that people who apply will not need a bachelor's degree?
I do not believe so, but I honestly, I do not believe so in speaking
Just
with them.
because, I mean, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking like Austin Cantu, who's still...
Yeah, because this is a tutor, it's not a
some of
certified,
our ex-students that may be going to, Lake County College.
Yeah, but we'll verify for you.
Yeah.
We'll get that too, so I'll write that down
Okay.
as well, okay? Yeah, absolutely.
Ms. Wozniak?
Rick asked most of my questions, but I do have, how soon do we think this could get up and running? I don't,
So my first-
62 days.
Yeah. So this is really what our first best thought of in leading this ship out of the gates, if you will. The schools that are using their data and are defining, and I'm going to get to this, but there is a whole system to really how they define the students by name and face for the supports that they need. And so those students that are working through that MTSS process a little bit faster than others, right, within their data, we would filter the intervention/tutors there, right? And they have their master schedule, and they have defined all the 5W, how, the who, the what, the when, the where, and the how. This is going to happen here at our building. So we think that it could be as soon as late October, and that would give, the schools need time, because what they don't want is for something to be approved or the possibility to be approved here, and then immediately, let's say that a tutor were available. Right, when we know that hiring is going to take a little bit of time, and then the schools don't have time to build the structure, the communication, the letters that need to go home for even the parents to say, yes, I want this for my students. So we're thinking early November, especially for those schools that have all that 5W how ready to go.
And the parents have to agree to this.
Well, yes, absolutely want the parents.
And then, what if a student does achieve and does, by April they're caught up, they've grown and they're at level?
It's usually a confetti cannon.
What does that mean?
We celebrate. We celebrate, right? Because that's
so
we meet the goal.
Do you pick a new student and that one?
The intention is that the students are with their small groups, right? Because it is also social emotional development. So we're talking about the social awareness, self-management, and I see you, Miss Hanny. Miss Hannah, I see you. I'm gonna get you to you. Let me finish this. I see you. Okay, I see you. Really, it is best within conferring with a tutor that they're with them all year. And so for us, that's great too for the consistency.
In mid-year, and get replaced.
Although I think we could, but they said you could do what you want, but when you're really thinking about the relationship and the development and really what this is about when you get to the nitty.
So what if a student decides, the parents and the student decide they don't want to do this tutoring anymore, then we will replace that student?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
But we also have to remember that we've decided that we're going to use this particular intervention for the neediest students. So if they have that much space to catch up, more than likely they're not going to cycle up. But if we did use MTSS the way it's meant to be, that there's a strong possibility that we're regularly evaluating the data and they could move between levels. So they might go from needing one-on-one support to small group. So that's a very valid point. Mr. Riddle, you asked a question about how I came about this. So one of the things is just there are a number of tutoring services. I've been to different conferences. What I was specifically looking for is something that provided us flexibility and in person. And this is the one. From there, I had that vet through. I worked with Joe Clary to make sure that we could look at what the agreement was, and then I brought it to the team, and we met with them, and then went through and asked questions about if it would be a good fit.
Right.
Okay. Ms. Gonzalez?
I will just say my comment more than a question. I have reservations about the contract, although it's cheaper than varsity tutors, which I liked. But is this 1.6 for just the 1 year?
Yes.
And varsity tutors was a 3-year, or it was just?
It was, I believe that was also, it was around 2, if not 2, for the 1 year. We didn't expend all of that, and that was part of the last conversation with why some ESSER funds were not totally expended and why there was going to be a shift. But we evaluated it over the summer, towards the end of the school year. Over the summer, determined that we would not continue with varsity tutors and that we would work with with Hey Tutor. Now, we can expand this contract, we can contract, we won't be able to contract it, but we can expand it, and after the term, we can determine whether or not we want to make it more focused or smaller. But this is well within that budget that we had initially established around tutoring. We were rather ambitious with it. It was a little over $8 million, and a majority of that was going to pay schools, site-based, yeah. And so this is a smaller portion of the overall budget.
So my comment is that I like that it's cheaper than what we were going with. I do have reservations about how quickly it could get up and running, just because I felt like, I've tutored myself, and it's, sometimes you can't make it, and then, I don't know, like, I feel like I trust that students will get something out of it. But that was just going to be my one comment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ms. Hannah, and then I saw you, Ms. McBride.
Okay, I am data versus child. Okay? What I mean is, our children are not data. And I think that we should kind of think about that. Anyway, I'm concerned because it was said about select students. I understand the percentiles, okay? And also that word that I say, and that is growth. Growth to, I guess, people is okay. Growth to me is a perpetuation of failure, because we need to get to attainment. That growth, and I'll use my age-old example, a third grader that grows 3 points in third grade. They go to fourth grade. They're not at fourth grade level. They just grew within third grade. And I'm talking to people about that concept of growth versus attainment.
Correct.
Because to me, it's a perpetuation of our students' failure. Okay? It keeps them failing.
That's right.
But we celebrate, we tell them and their parents that they're growing. Okay, wait a minute. I'm so sorry.
Sure.
And the other thing, I'm sold, okay, always have been, on the science of reading. The science of reading. And I also am a proponent of expending funds to prepare our teachers in teaching our children to read with the science of reading. MTSS, through my research and based on many educators, MTSS is just a buffer, and I'm not saying anything derogatory about that. I'm just saying what some researchers say about MTSS. It's a buffer because the science of reading is not being used. So, and I have information if you want it.
Thank you.
Okay, but we really are doing our children a disservice, and not just here. Okay, it's actually nationwide. Okay, where the science of reading is not being used to teach our children to read.
And I think it'll be good, as Ms. Rice de la Sanchez already offered, is if you can come back and present to the board what is being done about reading. I think we are having two separate conversations. One is related to this agenda item. I think it's very, at least from a board perspective, and anybody can disagree, I 100% understand Ms. Hannah's position. We want our students at attainment. You can never reach attainment if you don't grow. And so we have to get our students to not only grow, but to exceed their growth targets. And this is one of the ways in which they are recommending that we move that lever, if that is correct.
Yeah, and the growth tells us if the intervention is effective or not for that student, or if we need to adjust it.
Yeah.
And I had Mr.
Yeah, no, I'm just clarifying. Yeah.
Mr. McBride.
Just clarifying, yeah.
Mrs. Saria, I want to compliment you for trying. And I heard over and over about we always get a different curriculum that don't work, and that's nothing new. We've always had administrators come in and they always go out and get a vendor with a curriculum. Sometime we get to the point to where though we have to take books back because of the fact, and then we lose. But there's a program called Silver where people send their kids to
Sylvan.
for tutoring.
Yeah.
And it works apparently, and they pay. So we're talking about tutors for our kids here. If you don't do the tutoring, what do you do? So I'm saying that to say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Now, once again, a tutor is as good as the person that's doing the tutoring. And I heard you talk about training. And I also heard somebody talk about criteria, what kind of education they need. And then I also heard that we have students, high school students, going out to CLC that can stand over our students and help them with the ability to learn. I'm saying that to say that because some students sit in the classroom and they just wonder. But they're looking for somebody to stand over them to give them some guidance, and they can learn. They'll learn how to read, they'll learn how to focus. But again, that comes because you got a human being standing over them versus what you use with your computer. So if you don't do that, you lose anyway. So as far as the money is concerned, the idea that we're spending, kudos to you, man, for trying to do something. As far as tutoring, trying to address our kids' needs. Because if you don't, we'll continue to keep talking about how academically our kids are failing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board President.
Ms. Leguizamo.
So I have three things I kind of highlighted that we haven't really spoken about. So you talked about, like, we were talking a little bit about where are we going to get these people, right? And so can this company also partner with, like, our local schools such as CLC, Columbia, DeVry, Keller, Lake Forest, that right here, that's really local, that's already in that teaching route, to get them their college educational credits and to becoming, in that route. I think that'll help them and us in helping out with like local tutors. So is that something that they can do and partner with our
I think
local?
we can bring it back to them and ask them. Jen wasn't quite sure. I am almost positive that I heard them say it was a college degree, but I could be wrong. And it was a specialist in that particular content area, not necessarily someone that had a teaching certificate. But I could be wrong. It could be college enrolled. I don't know. So we'll have to clarify that point. And if so, then most definitely, I think it would be an excellent way to pair up students from CLC and other local schools in the area.
Yep. So I know that you guys have pinpointed grades 3, 5, 8, and 9. And our promotion and retention policy points the first grade as second versus third. I was wondering, why did you guys point out third versus second? Because I was hoping that it would be second, right, so that they wouldn't be retained if they were in that group, and they would get those interventions, right? Because our policy is to promote, not to retain.
Right. That's right.
But if they, if we need to, then we will. But just if you can kind of give a little bit thought around why you chose that.
This is, as I was kind of speaking to, this is one opportunity for intervention and tutoring. And within our elementary schools, our instructional support teachers, or ISTs, our interventionists that work in our primary grades, that give that additional scoop of support outside of Tier 1 using Amplify, in which we progress monitor tightly. So that speaks to that, Ms. Leguizamo.
And it's aligned to the strategy that we took before, is trying to provide something at every grade level. Again, it's not all encompassing. It's a number of different strategies that we're using together to provide supports across the board from K to 12.
Okay, and to add along some of what was commented in here, right, what ninth high school would look like, right, potentially using that 0 hour, right, and we know that we've talked a little bit about the studies and what they've been talking about, the ideal learning times for adolescent learning, right, and as we know, 0 hour is not within that time period.
No, it's not.
So if anything, I'd like to see if you guys can, see about reserving the 0 hour for other courses that are not as mentally challenging, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, but just trying to putting that out, right?
Yeah, I mean, it could be after school, but it definitely cannot be in lieu of another course that they need. So it still really is about problem solving, right? And looking at your structure and how you could support it. If we had structures that were split lunches, if we had a study hall, all of this can happen in a study hall. We don't have a study hall. We talked about this a lot.
Right.
So we're working within what we can and problem solving with the cards that are dealt to us. And so this is a way that we can work with the high school particularly, right, around that. So you're absolutely right, and that speaks to kind of that policy that we talked to as well for intervention.
And also incentivizing it for the high school students, trying to get them there, because that was a big issue about not doing it after school, because oftentimes students had other activities after school or had to work, or so looking at ways, again, problem solving. It's not, the implementation isn't always perfect, but we have to monitor it ongoing and then make adjustments as needed.
Ms. Hannah, and are you still?
Oh, just one last one. So I just want to, reiterate, as we're looking at potentially maximum 60 tutors, maximum 3 students per tutor, that's about 180 students across our entire student body. It doesn't seem too much of an impact for 1.6 million. But I mean, I'm just trying to, see, are we looking to maybe increase, or, I mean, this is, how do we, I'm pretty sure more than 180 students are going to fall within this.
There are multiple interventions that we're using, but again, this one, the primary focus, equity is not equality, right? It's about providing the resources where they're needed, and we wanted to focus on the neediest students. And so it is a smaller number, but we also wanted to make sure that we were focusing on that, and that there are other tutoring, there's other tutoring, there's other interventions that are available to all students. We're trying to make sure that we're addressing all students, and that's why I was glad when when Ms. Gillen asked the question about if DL and EL students were included, and they are. But again, this particular focus was trying to be as intentional as possible on the neediest students, and I think it is money well spent. I do think that it's an opportunity. There are opportunities that Ms. Gonzalez had asked if, it's less than varsity tutors, can we expand it? And I think this is where the team felt comfortable with this amount and with this type of services right now. I think to your point about the number, and also to Ms. Gonzalez's point about making sure that we can get these people in, right? We have to see how it is. And hopefully we can get those numbers, and if it's working well, then we can come back and talk about expanding it.
And by the data, I just want to make sure that the data you guys have already identified, you guys have already identified potentially 180 students, or are you below or above that number? Just kind of wondering if you already kind of know an estimate how many amount of students fall within this range?
Yes, I mean, and also knowing that it can be for exceeds as well. So knowing that schools have that opportunity to use their individualized data, especially at smaller schools, right? Yeah.
So when we
So
say,
the flexibility.
and I guess a point of clarification, and I see you, Ms. Gillen, right, is this one-to-one tutoring that may be happening with multiple groups, or are they only going to work if a school says you only work with one student, they're working with that one student all day?
Or 1 to 3, right? They could have that flexibility. It could be 1 to 2, one tutor intervention is to 2 students, and multiple times throughout the day.
Multiple times,
Yes.
but with those only that small
Those
group.
said students, because to Dr. Cesario's point, we really want to track the progress and the effectiveness of it and do a thorough analysis of it, right? And so having this group of students that each school is saying, using their process, is important to that, because they have multiple ways that they meet the needs of their students. This is one.
Ms. Gillen?
Yes.
If I'm understanding this right, I think we've got our math wrong. Because if I'm a tutor in the building for 6 hours a day, I'm probably going to pull my student or students, maybe 3 students, out for an hour. I'm not going to work with them all day. So over the course of 6 hours, I might work with 6 groups. 6 groups of 3 is 18 times our 60 tutors. And I might not even be doing it with just one day. So we're not talking about just reaching 180 students, but 180 times the 6 hours. So there's a lot more. But I came in today to talk about, and I had prepared something to say about how overwhelmed our teachers are, how behind some of our kids are. I'm going building to building, and Dr. Bublitz was talking last week about how wonderful the mainstreaming's going, and we have decided to work together to try and get some ideas, and I've got a commitment that we're going to work together. Our teachers are exhausted. Mr. Riddle, the idea of asking the teachers, they're not going to tutor. They're done. They're subbing. They're walking out to their cars and crying.
Right.
And then hopefully they're coming back the next day. We're exhausted. We are absolutely exhausted. We are crying. You guys have seen the turnover when you see our HR reports. We can't get the bodies in. And you know what? I'm sorry, but you don't need a bachelor's degree to hold up a flashcard and say, what letter is this? You don't need a bachelor's for every single thing. You need somebody supervising you that has that. But I got to tell you, a 4-year-old sometimes sits down with their little sister and pretends to read a story or do something else. We got to get people in here because our babies need some TLC. Everybody's losing it.
Right.
We are losing staff like every other school district, but we're harder hit.
Yeah.
We don't have the financial resources, and it. If I told you what I'm seeing every day, and how my heart is breaking, and how I'm running, and how all of our teachers are, we're done. And the ones that are hurting the most are that bottom.
Yeah.
And we've got to do something, because the demands on the teachers, every week there's something else put on our plates.
Right.
And then the teachers are falling apart. And then when the teachers fall apart, the principals are doing their job. And I'm looking at everybody is just, there's no more energy left. We've got to get some help because we're just hurting. Because the whole nation, people are walking off. There's nobody to fill any jobs anyplace. And our babies can't wait. And what happens is, you know, I drove past the country club the other day, and you can't go in there to eat anymore. They're giving you a drive-by meal if you want it. We can't do that with our kids' education.
Right.
But what happens is if the three of us are on the first grade team, and Jennifer gets too tired and she doesn't come in, guess what? Principal's going to come to me and ask me if I'll take half of her class and Eduardo to take the other half. And then when I go home tonight, I'm going to be more exhausted, and the kids aren't going to have gotten as much. We need the help. Our teachers are losing it.
Right.
And our babies at the bottom, they're not getting what they need.
Absolutely.
They need somebody to take them out, to just take them for a walk, to say you matter, to read a story, to rock them.
And if
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
okay, and I was going to ask the question through all of the new intervention, the new support, all of the supports, all of this and stuff. Are everybody at the table talking about this? And I'm going to ask, based on what we just heard from Ms. Gillen, are teachers, because I'm used to the operation of our education where everybody in the district came together to design programs that work, programs that are needed for the students, structure of what they're putting in to the schools and educating our children. Why I'm saying that because this has to be a collective effort to educate people. There cannot, the concept of, I am telling you that this is what it's going to be, and then it comes down and now you do what I said. It cannot be that, else our kids are not going to get the education they deserve, but also we're going to keep getting the horrid example of what we just heard. Everybody has something to contribute to the process, and so I am so praying that everybody is being brought into around the table, administrators, teachers, everybody, to come up with these programs and the way to teach. Therefore, the exhaustion level of our teachers won't be so bad. And especially if they're being brought into the fold, I think it just psychologically gives you more energy. Oh, well, yeah, I was a part of this. Oh, yeah, I helped do this. And if we're not doing that, I don't know.
Totally agree.
And then the other question, and this is my last one, with all of this and bringing in the 60 people that you all are talking with about, has this went through and been approved by the union? Because it's going to affect things in the union.
I don't see how it's going to affect things in the union.
Because, well, number one, you're going to be pulling kids out of their classes.
Okay. Well, again, so to your question about the tutoring supports, Amanda and I, we did work with paras and with teachers and asked for feedback about how that should be structured, and so we did ask for feedback on that. In terms of the Hey Tutor, it was an intervention that we're trying to bring in, a resource that we're trying to bring in. Again, trying to be responsive to some of the needs that Ms. Gillen has described so eloquently. I think it's another support. Ms. Gillen just said that we're going to work together to provide additional supports. One of the other things that was described or that was suggested was additional professional development, and those are ongoing conversations. So we fully appreciate the work that the teachers are doing, the paras are doing, our principals, and everyone in the schools. And we understand that it's a difficult time. Our intent is to ensure that we are supplementing and trying to support as best as possible.
I will be back here next month at the Student Achievement Meeting, opening my mouth if we haven't sat down at the table and if the union has any issues with this tutoring. I promise you, I will come back and speak up.
Yeah, when I go to these are one of those things, and Mr. McBride stepped out, but it relates to a lot of times we ask, and I heard three things, so I want to make sure that's recognized, is we say don't do 3-year contracts or 5-year contracts because we want to make sure that they're working. We had a solution or a proposed solution that was not working. The team evaluated it and they decided not to continue it. We also heard a request that we need to spend ESSER funds on those that need it the most in student services. And so they come back with a recommendation which provides in-person tutoring to our neediest students. And so that was the second thing that I want to say they're proposing. And then we heard from a teacher who's talking to multiple teachers that they need the support. And so for me, I support it, right? I look at it, I look at the dollar amount. I think this is one of many, but that's part of a lot of times we ask, and I want to say this is what they've come back and provided was, hey, we know this is an issue. I have a similar concern with hiring, right? I want us to make sure that we get the people in here and that they are there to support, because it does nothing to, and I know you all know, but I need to say it for the community because it's not, I recognize it. It does nothing to set aside the funds, approve the funds, have the money sitting there, and not be using the resources in the classroom. So I want to say thank you for that, and thank you, Ms. Gilman, because I don't want to ignore what you said. I think as a nation, we are tired. Other districts are experiencing it. We are seeing teachers leave the profession at alarming rates, and there aren't replacements for them. They're not coming out of the teacher colleges. They are not. And so we will have to continue as a district to look at creative solutions, not only to support our teachers, but to support the needs of our students. Again, thank you. If you guys think of any other questions after you review it, I would encourage you to send those to myself and the superintendent, and we'll make sure that they get answered.
Board President?
Yeah, fine. I mean, I was just going to mention that part of the, and I'll say unrealistic expectations on our teachers and our staff, getting our students growing in terms of their reading targets and at grade level reading, is because we don't empower our families, right? Parents, guardians, people at home to just sit down and read with students. That alone is what we need. So I want to bring that piece into this because I think it's always about like which program and how many teachers and all this stuff. Can we get admin in the classroom? And I'm like, yes, that's a part of it. We understand that there's a problem. This has been a problem across decades that we've been experiencing, but it takes a village, and so like let's build that village and have everyone play a role. That's what I wanted to say. I also wanted to, I understand how passionate we are about this issue, but this is the first discussion item that we've gone through, and it should be a no-brainer at this point. Varsity tutors was not working. We need something else, and we need tutoring. Tutoring helps students read, helps them with math, whatever core subjects we want them to kind of go through to support what the teachers are teaching in the classroom. Respectfully, can we move on to the next agenda item, or?
Just really quick, hopefully, I was just wondering if, this I think is something that needs to get done ASAP. I would like for them to kind of get started. I'm not saying to vote for today, but if we kind of have a good head nod for them to start moving some stuff along, I don't want them to stop the progress. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think they'll be bringing it back on Tuesday, so 7 days won't delay. I know we want to start right away, but they obviously are in conversations and know.
We already are, and actually we did, the contract was already vet through Joe, and they looked through SOPA, and so we're in the process. Obviously, we're not doing anything without board approval, but we're right at the point, so next week we're not losing any time, I guess, is what I'm saying. So we're in good shape right now.
And then to Ms. Gonzalez's point, the rest of the items that have been presented are there for information. So if there were no other questions on this topic, I'm going to run through each of them like I did in the previous board meeting. Under information, you got Clark Elementary professional development request. Information is there. AASA National Conference in San Antonio, Texas. The information is there. Item 5C, the EIR grant purchase for Lego education sets. Information is there. E, approval of high school leadership coaching for Gearing Consultant LLC for 5E. Information has been presented. F, teachers attendance at National Association of Biology Teachers Conference. And G, renewal of Scribble's contract for Scribborder transcript request system.
And that's for the high school, right?
For the transcripts?
The transcript thing.
Right.
That's for former students. Former students, yes.
Okay.
All right. If there are no other questions.
Did they want to talk about this?
Yeah, I want to know what this is.
That's from Mr. Bolton. I don't know if he's here. He went to a conference and brought that back as a gift to the board.
Oh, I thought y'all, look, technology, y'all giving me some technology.
It's a gift.
LCD right in charge.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moon.
So with that, I then would like to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Riddle.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Ms. I think that was Wozniak. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned.